Thanks for joining us for another episode of Rockland Sound, where Rockland turns into Rockland. I'm your host, Tom Osa, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Mike Doherty. He's the host, I'm the host, we're both the host. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing very, very well. Great day. Thank you.
Mike's hanging out in one of the music capitals of the world, Austin, Texas, and representing over there. And hopefully we're going to get back to a complete sense of normalcy in 2021. Over the past year, we've done several really cool episodes, and you can catch them on YouTube. You just go to RocklandSound.com. You can catch us on our Facebook page. Look up Rockland Sound on YouTube, and you'll find us. We've done interviews over the past with members of AC/DC, Striper. One of our favorite interviews was with the band Anvil, Lips from Anvil. White Lion. I mean, it's just been great. And we're joined by the legendary Bruce Kulick of many bands fame. Just to name a few things, if you remember Kiss Carnival of Souls, that's one of the classic albums that came out during the non-makeup era. And some that would say that it's a classic in itself, by itself. Union with John Corabi. John Corabi was also in Motley Crue. Grand Funk Railroad. He's been in Grand Funk Railroad for almost 20 years, and a few other projects which I'll bring up over the course of time. But I just wanted that, Bruce. Thank you for joining us tonight. Just a pleasure to have you here.
All right. Well, thanks for the invitation. All good.
Yes, thank you very much as well.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. We did a little research, and we kind of tried to go for a little bit of a different vibe instead of making it all just about all the different stories on the road and whatnot. But we try to look at it from the perspective of your musical influences and the different things that kind of brought you into the vibe of music from the get-go, and how those things influenced your music over the course of time. Early on, and actually we have a little bit of a connection. I'm sure you never saw me in the streets, but we both grew up in Queens
Right.
at one point or another. I understand, this is just from Wikipedia, that you graduated from a high school in Queens, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Newtown High. In fact, Gene Simmons went to that one too. He was a little older than me, so I didn't know him. And Paul Stanley in Flushing. So, Kiss has a connection with some Queens things, obviously being a New York band originally,
I have some good memories down there, admittedly mostly being on the low end of the totem pole in the schoolyard, but it builds character,
Oh,
so, yeah. Now, something that Mike often likes to bring up early on in the conversation is, how you picked up your musical influences, the first albums. You want to turn it over to you, Mike. Just ask that famous question, man.
Yeah, before I ask the question, one thing I want to say is I'm extremely honored to have you on the show. I brought up before we started, today is an anniversary for us. Obviously, it's not an anniversary, but March 29th, 1985 was the last show of the Animalize tour. That was my first Kiss concert as a fan of a new band a new band to me that I got into with Heaven's on Fire. And you were about 20 feet from me because I was in the second row, but by myself because all my buddies got tickets before. And there was a point there where Paul jumped down by your knees. He splashed me with his sweat on his hair, and you pointed at me, and I got baptized by the Rock and Roll Kiss. And I've been with you ever since. And so
that's cool.
It's a huge honor. Thank you.
All right, no problem. What city was that, Mike?
East Rutherford, New Jersey, the Meadowlands.
Oh, New Jersey. Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I've seen a bunch of shows there: Asylum, Revenge, Hot in the Shade. And I was at the show that was Eric's last show at Madison Square Garden.
Yep.
God bless him. And one of the things that Tom was leaning on too is when we get into this, obviously, with your stature, you've been asked every question I could probably almost ask, but what we would like to do is, and it seems to be something a little unique, is get to know you, as a person, because really your music wouldn't be what it is and the things that you contribute, and the places you go, without you and how you formed that, your personality and your outlook on life. My question, though, that I like to ask is, what is the first album that you bought with your own money that you had to go, I need this? What comes out of high water, I'm getting that album.
Yeah. Well, there were two that really stand out to me, and they're so different. Okay. And I be real honest, I'm not really sure which one came first. Obviously, in high school, I was influenced. Well, I grew up in. I turned on to the Beatles and the British Invasion. But, when I was old enough to just say, like, okay, I'm going to buy something, I remember hearing Black Sabbath, the very first album.
Yes.
There was a department store in Rego Park, which wasn't too far from Jackson Heights, where I grew up. I could take a bus and go down there. I remember buying Beatle records and things like that. But I just know that there was that first Black Sabbath album freaked me out. I heard them playing it, and to me that was like metal cream, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So I had to get that. But then again, the other record, which just shows the other side of me, was I really like some of the softer things too, like someone like Simon and Garfunkel. I thought they were amazing, and beautiful songs, great singing, and really cool instrumentation. Though that was much more acoustic music. Mm-hmm. And I bought that Bridge Over Troubled Waters. Okay, you couldn't be more different than I Am Iron Man or something like that from Black Sabbath. I don't even know if that's on that first record. I don't think it is, but you get the point. Mm-hmm. That I was like, I heard Black Sabbath and I said, I got to have that. That's amazing. And then again, I had to have Bridge Over Troubled Waters, by Simon and Garfunkel. And ironically, both of those bands and both of those artists are still, well loved now. It's like amazing. Ozzy continued, of course, solo, but he did, many versions of Black Sabbath. And as much as Simon and Paul Simon and Garfunkel split up in a way, but, they did things together. Paul Simon's still out there and well respected. So I think that's great.
Now, aren't they from the same area too?
I think they grew up in New York, but that old thing where they say, like, you may not want to meet your heroes and stuff like that. So I remember, I met Ginger Baker one time at the fantasy camp, and
he's a personality.
He was pretty old by then, so he wasn't too crusty, but I knew he was definitely crusty. Okay. Mm-hmm. And but then again, I met Jack Bruce and I got to jam with him, and he was a real sweetheart. But speaking of cream, but the guy, the Garfunkel, I used to hear these stories about him from sometimes traveling with Grand Funk, and we get a limo driver for that gig or whatever, and he goes like, "Oh yeah, I was driving, Garfunkel," and then they'd always tell a story. You're like, ugh. You know what I mean? So what can I say? I love the people's music, and I actually try to live up to the time I met Brian May. I was only like 22, and I was in a disco band, kind of top 40 band, backing up Andrea True. Okay, you want to get some background on me. Mm-hmm. And there we are at a venue in Chicago, and Queen was obviously in town, and they wanted to go somewhere, and we were playing late, me and that band, and no one that of. She was the girl that had that hit, More, how do you like it? Anyway, next thing I know, backstage is Brian May and Roger Taylor. Roger was kind of quiet. He didn't want to hang with anybody, but Brian was chatting with me right away. And I was like, this guy, he's like this incredible guitar player. Queen is amazing. And he still is like the most perfect gentleman, in rock and roll, that.
And I think rock and roll's only astrophysicist.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So now, Andrea True, if I'm not mistaken, because we did a little research on this going through the years. So she actually had a different career as a movie star.
Yeah.
She kind of like channeled it into,
She was a porn star. We could say that. And she wound up getting picked up by this booking agent to manage her, who had a lot of success with George McRae, who was another artist that I worked with, who was this guy who had the single Rock You Baby, which was very helpful for me because I got to tour in Europe and perform sometimes in really kind of crazy places, and then really big, beautiful places. So when that guy wound up managing Andrea, she met a popular producer who could write a hit song, and she wound up with that More song. The only odd story, and I'll tell you guys, it's pretty funny. I was always like that's not my world, all that wildness. Even when I was in Kiss, anything to do with that kind of thing wasn't really my thing. But she once, overlapping her success of that single, she actually did have one of her movies premiering, and she asked me to chaperone her to go with her. Okay. And again, my relationship was, I was the guitar player, there was no way,
Same thing, it's like observe, don't participate.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all same mind. Yeah.
There I am, way too young to really understand anything, but knowing that, like, okay, this is going to be interesting. I'm going to go with Andrew to see the movie Meatballs or something like that. You know what I mean? and that was the old school porno, pretty hairy. Everything's going on a little differently than what it evolved into. But I went with her as her bandmate, as a friend. And ironically enough, when she picked me up or something before we were going to go to the theater, I saw Andy Warhol across the street.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Because she lived in these brownstones in Manhattan. So I've had some interesting, stories in my life that are unusual, related to some artists that a lot of people don't even know about. But that was kind of interesting. And clearly, a lot of people don't delve into like my pre really cool gigs, like from Meatloaf on. But each one of these things, to tie it all together, it makes you better as a musician, and know like how do you fit in? What is, like what Michael was saying about your personality? How does that affect? And I always wanted to kind of do the best I could and work with everybody in the best way possible. And that's probably why I was able to keep the Kiss gig for 12 years. Because, if you're not going to show respect to Gene and Paul and understand the big picture of everything, it could be really bumpy, so I kept it as best as I could.
Okay.
There's dynamics to everything where it's like, you understand what you're walking into and
right.
like observing and stuff. And when looking at the career that you've had thus far, and it's a variety, not just obviously with Kiss, but early on Meatloaf. There was, I'm just looking at my notes here, Michael Bolton.
Yep.
Michael Bolton.
Let me have one little moment before Tom continues.
Yeah, no, take it. It's all right.
No. I'm not trying to. We happen to have our other guest is actually in the waiting room there, and he's a little early, so I don't want to be rude to him, but I think we could continue the interview and then with Bruce and then pick it up with Toby. But
we have a surprise. Yep.
Yeah.
He just gave the name away, but that's the surprise.
Yeah. Well, we had a surprise.
Well, I did tease.
That's kind of why you mentioned this early on.
Yeah,
being an important record.
That's right.
Okay, and we got Toby Wright on with us. How are you, Toby? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing well, thank you. How about you?
All right, great.
That would be the Tom Mosa, whose award you want, but we'll get into that later. And he didn't join us on the interview we had previously, but he is here now.
Right.
We were in the middle of asking Bruce a question, so if you guys want to say anything to each other.
It's great to see you, Toby. Absolutely.
And you as well, my friend.
And I love your background is quite, musical. I love it.
It's my studio.
Smart man. All right. I'm sure you can get yourself lost in there, especially when everything was really shut. I mean, things are starting to open up, but wow, that'll be fun.
So if it's okay with Toby, what we're going to do is we were in the middle of the beginning of Bruce's career, and we're going to lead up to Kiss and different things. And then
we were in the middle of my career. I guess it was more the beginning, but we'll do the abbreviated version so we can get to Toby and I.
Yep.
We just know for a fact that we're not at the end of your career, because I think that's happening a long time
nice to
from
know.
now.
Yeah.
The way you're going, it's just.
I might be at the end of my wits, but not my career.
Wits, yeah.
Well, I hope that's not my fault.
All right. So you asked about Michael Bolton. right?
Yes.
Yes.
Michael
Okay.
Bolton. So a lot of different personalities that you worked with. And Michael Bolton, for those of you that don't know, before he became, mega with some pop rock and such, he had a little bit of more of a rock edge to him. And, you played in two bands with him. First Blackjack, 1979. And then, on his self-titled studio album.
Solo
So,
stuff, yeah.
yeah.
Well, Michael
Yeah.
started out from New Haven, and he was like a really blues rock singer. And my brother knew him also, and we did some gigs with him together. Sometimes just Bob played with him, and he used to do a lot of great covers and stuff. And he was popular in New Haven. Then he finally really, I think he even put out a blues record or something, but nothing big happened. And then he finally really dialed in with a great demo that he used Johnny Winters on guitar,
Oh, wow.
and he got it to
Johnny.
the right business people who knew that they, like, Polydor was looking for a rock band kind of thing, more like a Bad Company, not a solo rock artist, So Michael reached out to have a band. So he went to people that obviously that he worked with before. And I hit it off well with Michael, and we got this fantastic bass player, Jimmy Haslip, who went on to do amazing things more in the fusion and jazz world, but still fantastic player from Gino, worked with Gino Vanelli. And then Sandy Gennaro, who's the drummer from Nashville, now lives in Nashville, but another New Yorker that was really terrific. So we had Blackjack. We did two records. First one was with Tom Dowd. We got signed by Polydor. That's before Polygram. And, I got to do videos. They put a lot of money into it, which meant, like, even though it sold fairly well, it wasn't an instant gold record. Okay. We did the second record. By then, most of those people were fired. Okay. But that record also was connected to other artists that I played with because I recorded up in Woodstock. That's where I did the
Nice.
Billy Squier Tale of the Tape album. Anyway,
Mhm.
Michael, after that, when it all fell apart and we lost the record deal and all that, he went off and started to write more. And then he realized, I'm going to rebrand myself. I'll be Michael Bolton. Okay. And then he had now MTV. It's now like 83. And he has a terrific song called Fool's Game. He looks great. It's got a great, great album that I played a little bit on. Now he's going to go tour. Okay. And then he asked me to play guitar. And we got this really great leg of a Bob Seger tour with 3 weeks.
Oh,
And
wow.
hence me meeting Don Brewer, actually, because Don was playing drums with Seger. He sometimes was the drummer, even though he had Grand Funk Railroad, but in the 80s, they weren't doing anything. So anyway, he was with Seger, which helped me years later, obviously. But Michael and I always stayed close, even when that didn't happen big for him. And that's when he really started to write a little more pop, kind of blue-eyed soul music. And then he became really big and won a Grammy and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
it was a great connect.
Uh-oh.
And I have to say that I'm always proud of him. There's many gigs that Grand Funk does, like Casino and something, and I see he was there, last month. I'll take a picture of the poster, and I send it to him, and then it starts in a conversation. But Michael's just a very driven, very, very smart musician who handles a lot of it himself, much like Gina Paul. And then that big connection with Michael and Kiss, the fact that Michael now is well known. He's a big songwriter, and he reaches out to me. What about a power ballad for Kiss? And of course, him and Paul come up with a terrific song called Forever, which really did define quite a bit of certain album, Hot in the Shade, in that era for me. So that was great to connect all that together. And then, as I mentioned, what was that?
He plays that live too.
Yeah,
Forever.
he does it too, which is great. And it's real ironic. Here's a song I wrote for Kiss. You know what I mean? And then, it just shows he's still to this day, just to wrap up, Michael is like, always says like, I want to do a rock record sometime, so I'm going to call you. That conversation started 10 years ago and nothing's happened. You know what I mean? But whatever. He's like a brother too. And I'm always real proud of everything he's done.
Well,
You know, you mentioned about the how let's say the smart musicians, you know, they know how to kind of like adjust with the inevitable changing of the times. Toby, I'm sure you can relate to this too. Is like, you know, musicians, they kind of see the wave and such. We were in the studio last week and we were talking about the Bee Gees movie that came out. I think it's on HBO or Showtime, which I haven't seen the whole thing. But how originally, and I didn't know much about them, but they, you know, originally just played very soulful songs, and then they kind of like caught on to the wave with you know, disco and such. And as quickly as as it started, it ended, and then they shifted again into studio sessions, and they've done very well.
Yeah, it was a
They
great
just
documentary.
know how to shift. Mike, you were going to say something.
That was a great documentary that's on HBO Max of the Bee Gees. There, they had a hell of a great. They were from like little boys all the way up to, you know, Barry is the only one left.
Yeah.
So I mean,
That's a great band. I love their
ride.
first like kind of hippie album, you know, with the 1940 something mining disaster and all those songs. Love that stuff, you know. And then you know, I have to cover them in a kind of top 40 band with you know, their disco stuff. Yeah, most great artists can kind of adapt to the times and make it their own. And if they're really talented, they'll keep doing it, you know, doing what they, you know, being popular. There's no reason not to. Just like Toby adapts to everybody.
Yes.
Doesn't he?
I have to, right? Don't I?
Yeah.
I want to slip one little question into Bruce though, real quick, just because you were talking about the disco years and knowing that that Eric did the same thing around New York. Eric Carr,
yes.
When he was Paul, you know.
Yes.
But I was wondering if you know, if you had ever run into him just in the circuit.
I did not, and that's a really cool question. But I was very aware of that band that he had, and I'm trying to remember if that was. Do you remember the name of that band?
I think it was Flasher or something.
That was one of them. But he had another top 40 band, and I know they did the same circuit as one of the bands that I did, and they were really, really one of the best ones around. And then I remember there was a really scary thing that happened. There was a big fire in one of the clubs, and he just got out in time, you know. And a lot of people got killed. But it was also New York was having the Son of Sam.
Oh yeah,
stalking and killing people, and the guy was like on his way to like the club where Eric was playing or something. I heard, you know, the day, and then they caught him though. You know, something happened. That's another crazy. Maybe Mother Father Time or something. I can't remember. I think I have a picture of it on my computer. What he looked like in the disco days.
You speak of serial killers. You know, Deborah Harry one time said she was in a taxi in New York City, and it was Ted Bundy that was driving it.
Oh my God.
And she jumped out of the taxi while it was going down the like Broadway or something. Enough serial killers.
No.
So let's go. Well, you wanted to ask, I guess, another question because we're in the Meatloaf area. There where you did that with your brother. And how'd you get into that?
Yeah, Bob was well on the scene in New York, being older than me, and he already was getting known by different people. So he got the audition. They were looking for 2 lead guitar players, much like Dick Wagner and Steve Hunter, you know, like what Alice Cooper and Lou Reed had. And, you know, Bob fit right in. They weren't even that sure about me, but Bob really stuck up for me. But they were very happy that I did the gig, and they chose me because I would learn the Todd Rundgren guitar parts. You know, we didn't play on Bad of the Hell, the album. We just played on, you know, the live gigs. Although there is some video and audio of me and my brother with Meatloaf from that era. What a great album. It was a crazy tour. You got 9 people on stage, and he's 300 pounds in a tuxedo. Jim Steinman, very eccentric. But it was really a good time for me to learn what it is to go from literally a brand new band to, you know, with a record release to not doing too well in the first few gigs. You know, we got booed off the stage with like Cheap Trick. You know, it was a really rough crowd. And then within, you know, a few months with radio play and support, and then was selling out arenas and traveling the entire world. It was crazy. My brother went on and continued with him when he, you know, got back out there a few years later after that. And I just never really that's when I did the Blackjack album. So actually, Meatloaf was right before me working with Michael Bolton and all.
Oh, okay. So it was in that time range there.
77, 78. Yeah.
Oh, okay, and then you went you Blackjack and then on. And how about the Billy Squier just opportunity? That was just the album.
It was another, yeah, just a record. He wanted me to go tour with him, and then actually Blackjack, me with Michael, we were supposed to tour in support of the second record. So I told him I couldn't do it, and then we never toured. So I was, oh my God, I could have been with Billy Squier. His first record didn't do that great, even though it's an amazing record. But by the second album, he became a major star, as we all know. So what can I say other than I learned a lot from Billy too, and I love the Tale of the Tape.
Yeah.
I just bought the vinyl recently. I've had it on CD for many years, but it's such a great record.
It is.
And it was at that same studio up in Woodstock where Michael and I did the second Blackjack record. And you know, what's really interesting and important for everybody to know out there is how all these things get interconnected. And I know Toby can share that too. That it's just like, you know, you work with different artists. You never know when you're going to meet them again, even though the circumstances could be completely different. So it's really great that I've had all these like kind of, you know, a step ladder of things. And by the time I had the opportunity for KISS, of course, I was well prepared with all the touring and the different artists that I worked with.
Yep. Well, now I guess we'll go into KISS phase. So we have Toby here, obviously the producer of one of the, I would call it maybe a controversial KISS record. And I think more of that is about the time of it and maybe the direction of it, which is Carnival of Souls. So that one came out at the tail end of your career with KISS, but it didn't seem to be intended that way initially. And then apparently Makeup came back and has been there since. Now you got in the KISS just doing some session work on Animalize, filling in for from Mark, and I think that was because he was probably getting driven crazy a little bit by or driving Paul crazy a little bit because he kind of was a little bit too much over the top, and he wanted to have a little bit more structures to some of the solos to keep the album going. I do have a question though about Animalize. When you did do the solos that you did play on it, did you use his rig?
I just think I was using whatever they had there. And, you know, even if I did plug into his rig, I would have sounded like me. Right. I know Toby knows how that goes. The sound, a lot of it's in your hands. Mm-hmm. But it was, you know, first of all, I don't know when actually Mark knew he had a health problem thing. But when that started, you know, in his hand, he had this arthritic condition. And then on top of it, I think, like you were mentioning, Paul might have been a little frustrated by, you know, his approach, but they wanted this like, you know, incredibly fast fusion style guitar player, you know, and I really always felt that was a strange choice, even though Mark was very talented. With KISS, it, you know, you better know your, you know, kind of like your Jimmy Page and your Jimi Hendrix and your Eric Clapton and your meat and potato rock and roll kind of stuff.
You gotta have your foundation.
So I fit in way better. And even when he got well and joined us on the Animalize tour, they kind of saw that I was a better fit. And it was a weird way to get a gig, but you know, it all worked out the right way for the band. And the little bit that I played on Animalize, Paul was happy, which got me the opportunity to be the temporary guy, you know, and, you know, don't cut your hair. When I left, I didn't know why he said, don't cut my hair, you know, but I think he already knew there could be a problem with Mark and they're going to go on tour, you know, because I don't know if they knew they were going to have a hit right away, but they had a tour commitment, you know what I mean, in England. And then of course, Heaven's on Fire was a hit. And it was pretty exciting time to join the band. And then within a few weeks of being on the road in America, that's when they offered me the contract and sent Mark home. And it turned into 12 years, which is pretty remarkable.
Absolutely. I can tell you the funny story about how I got wind of you being in the band without knowing who you were at first. Was I had the poster of them that had Mark on it on my wall.
Right.
And I had gotten Animalized and saw the videos with Heaven's on Fire, obviously. So I'm thinking, you know, KISS is coming around. I'm going to go see, you know, with Mark. And I'm walking down and there's this deli and somebody made like a homemade flyer, like the deli guy. It must have been a fan because he made his own flyer.
Okay.
And I walk in, I actually asked for it and he gave it to me. And I walked in and I'm looking and I'm like, where did Eric get that hair? You know, because it was you. And I was like, oh, all right, wait, who's this? You know, and then he actually ended up telling me, he's like, that's the new guy, Bruce Kulick. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Back then in 80, 84, 85, there was no way, there was no internet, there was no fast way to get the information to people.
Right.
You know, I remember Kerrang magazine in England did have a picture of me because they're one of the very few magazines back then that were like published like within a week or when they put it together, and they knew I was coming. So there was a little insert of me or something in that magazine. America was always like a month or two lag time for a magazine. And, you know, it wasn't like going to be on your local news necessarily. And I got to admit, people didn't know who they were going to see. Some people didn't realize that Ace wasn't there, and they maybe didn't know Vinny at all, whatever. It was a really weird time for the band in that way.
Knew the name.
You brought the structure there, Bruce, and I think they needed it as much as you needed the opportunity. I think that that's the one thing that, you know, you could talk about Gene and Paul, and I'm, you know, and I'm sure they're brilliant, obviously, in their career. They're still here, and they're still filling arenas. But I think that there's that working man ethic about you that you said you have to respect kind of the position you're in. And I think you brought a lot of glue to some moments that, you know, could have been unglued.
Sure. No, I was really, when I look back now, I was just, you know, I was along for the ride, though I was trying to be as creative and contribute the most I could. But it was really always Gene and Paul's, you know, thing. You know, it was always their show and their direction. And, you know, I definitely knew how to assert myself when I, you know, was asked or needed to. But it was mostly, this is a great opportunity. And if I just play guitar well, you know, they're going to, you know, really take care of me more, and they're going to appreciate me more. And it was actually during, I know Toby's back there, you know, maybe he could say something about Crazy Nights. Nevison, and working with Nevison, which wasn't always easy for me, actually, but Nevison made my guitar and my lead work up front, you know, and very important. And they saw that I stood up for myself with Ron, and I got a lot of respect, I think, from Gene and Paul. And I remember, ironically enough, they actually started to like pay me more and be nicer to me after Crazy Nights. I don't know why that album had happened. You know, Toby, maybe you know something about it.
Oh, maybe it was the hard time that you know it was made under. You know, because I remember there was a lot of tension going on during that record. You know, between just everybody, kind of weird stuff. Yeah, you know, I was disattached because I was the assistant engineer. Right. You know? So it was kind of, that was a whole different perspective for me.
Well, the tension to me, and maybe you can shed some light on it, even though I know you weren't, it's not like the co-production you did on Carnival of Souls where you were really in the thick of it, but I think Gene was nervous as hell working with Ron Nevison, and Paul loved it. To him, it would be all not, you know, like the entire record would be just his songs. Right. Was that part of the tension you saw? And Gene got crazy every time he saw the keyboard or a sample.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And that was, well, in the end, I think it's a great record, you know, and I didn't feel like he took away, although for some people, they got that pop sense and it didn't turn them on. Meanwhile, we had the huge hit with Crazy Nights around the world, really, more in Europe and everything. So, but Ron, at times he would fight, you know, I'd say like, can't you switch to solo right there, you know? And then he'd be like, what, you know, you do it, you know, and I got into it with him. And then I was no engineer. I knew how to anticipate on a Studer, and I went, and then his reaction was, why didn't you show me that in the first place? You know, I mean, one of those lines. So was he always that crusty, Toby? Was Ron always that crusty?
Not always,
Okay.
But there was, you know, I think Gene just kind of, you know, put Ron on it too, right? So, you know, they fed each other's, you know, edginess, and that fed everybody else, you know.
Well, why didn't that help you then? Because when in Carnival Souls, which was incredibly weird, because you got the two guys that it's their band, but
Yep.
they also, while they're doing a record, are actually, doing all the business moves and all the things that are important with phone calls and lawyers on the phone in the back room about the reunion tour while
Right.
we're recording.
Right. That was weird.
Yeah. And we didn't know
Bottom
about
line,
it.
that was weird.
But
And we
wait,
didn't know about it for quite a
We
while.
didn't know it.
the
And you
best
got
was
Gene really liking the heavy stuff. Okay. Paul kind of being like, I don't know, but he knows he wrote some good stuff it was with me and Kurt Cuomo, and he
Right.
came up with some great things.
Yep.
At the same time, they're doing all that backroom kind of business. And then
Definitely.
finally, I mean, in January, they had to tell Eric and I'm not sure what made them want to tell, but I got to say that, the dynamic of that record was very, very, it had to be really weird for both Toby and I, because at times they were there and at times we couldn't tell what was going on. Right.
Right. Exactly. And I remember the moment that, we found out, and we found out together, you, me, and Eric, because Paul was sitting in the room and Gene just came in. And I think, the catalyst was him accepting the contract. Right. And he came in and he gave us the news of $100 million go on tour thing. And everybody's face went from smile to,
Yeah.
now what?
I mean, Eric Singer was very shocked because he didn't know how they'd be able to pull it off, but I was kind of like, I mean, how many times did I hear that Ace wanted to be back in Kiss? A million times, so it wasn't as shocking to me. But more importantly, we needed to there was a record deal, the label paid, we were knee deep in recording a record. Yep. And I have to admit, when I was thinking about earlier, talking with you about that album, that I actually do think, like, for example, here's not a really big factor, but for me personally, it would have been, I think if there was no reunion tour, that was actually surrounding that recording, I probably wouldn't have sang I Walk Alone.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
agree.
Gene would have sang it like it was always intended to. I know you really rallied and said, no, Bruce sang it on the demo and it sounds great. He should have that song. And I actually think it's possible that Gene and Paul kind of back down, knowing that, like, well, maybe we should give him a song or something like that.
Well, that was one of the.
Possibly.
I just wanted to say, when I interviewed Toby, that was one of the things I asked him. I said,
okay,
was it a planned thing that you got to write all those songs and kind of take the reins in a sense, because you always had songwriting credit, and you always contributed to some great stuff, but really it's almost like when Vinny came into Kiss and Lick It Up, and almost every track he's a co-writer on, but I think one, and you're in there doing the same thing. And I was wondering if that was something that you felt out of place, like, this is a little odd.
No, to be quite honest, I always tried to contribute. At times it was harder, but I have to admit, once I knew we were going to do a record that was meaner, darker, and crazier than maybe Revenge, because Ezra was not going to get involved, even though he started us off with a track for I Walk Alone. It wasn't the final version, but I started to just jam a lot to my drum machine with some interesting time signatures. Personally, I was going through a lot of stress in my life, in my relationship. So all I wanted to do was be in my studio and write riffs. And I seemed to really dialed into something. So every time I would present something to Paul, and especially with that guy, Kurt Cuomo, who Paul was comfortable with, it gelled and it came together. Okay. And then Gene actually mostly co-wrote more in a different way. I would contribute, like he'd have Hate, but he was missing the bridge. And then while we were jamming it with Eric Singer in the studio, I'm going, how about this? Or I'm in the studio with him and he co-writes a song with Tommy. And then we put it together with another song with an idea I have with him. And suddenly we have a different Childhood's End put together. And I'm writing like a part for that. So the Gene stuff was all like kind of me helping him and putting things together. And a lot of the Paul stuff, the Rain riffs and everything, I had a great vibe for that. I had all the sections, but it wasn't a song. It was just great riffs and sections. And then Paul jumped right in. Kurt helped with him, with however they work together. I wasn't even always there with them for that stuff. So what can I say? I will be there. I just had a great couple of chords and a bridge, and it worked out really well. So suddenly 9 co-writes.
Even after Carnival of Souls, you still collaborated with them on the, was it Psycho Circus album?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Circus, there was one song that I worked on with Paul that, oddly enough, Bruce Fairburn didn't hear. They hired me to do some work because I helped them with some demos. Paul likes the way I play bass, so now I'm going in there to play some bass. But I cleverly actually said to Fairburn, I go like, did Paul ever play you this song? I think it's the title is like Dreaming. And he said, no. I said, all right, you didn't hear it from me. Ask him if he has anything else lying around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know why Paul didn't play it for him, And the next thing I know, Fairburn liked it, and we wound up recording it. So I had a co-write, and I didn't play any lead guitar except for there's some backwoods within guitars from demos for Carnival of Souls that appear on that Psycho Circus record. But I played bass on like 4 or 5 songs. They wanted to have me help out, why not?
That's cool. It's like I have, I have my own web development company for the last 15 years. But before that, I worked for another web developer, and I had 2 bosses, and they were pretty tough on me. I was just a kid and just trying to figure out what's going on. And they were pretty tough on me. And at the end, I got fired, full disclosure there. And in honesty, I mean, I deserved it because I wasn't bringing in the revenue that was justified for my salary at that point. So I got fired, and it was what it was. But I always tried to stay close with the owner afterwards. And I was like, hey, if you need me to collaborate on things. So he brought me along, and that helped in my career. Obviously different levels. I mean, you're
Right.
dealing with quite some. And, I also want to bring in Toby. I don't know if we did a formal introduction. Of course, Mike did the previous interview, but just for those of you that are getting acquainted, Toby is a legendary record producer, mixing engineer. And I say that with a lot of heart because you have produced just a multitude of albums that I just have in my, digitally now, but vinyls and CDs. I mean, Alice in Chains, Seven Dust, Korn. I mean, the list goes on and on. Slayer, and of course Kiss. So, again, thank you for coming on to the show. And just with regards to and Mike is much more astute with Kiss. I'll say that as a full disclosure as well. But just the dynamics that I wanted to ask you, along with what we were asking Bruce, is the personalities. And you've come across so many personalities over the course of your career thus far. How do you manage it? Do you just be zen like you have been in this interview, just kind of like hanging out? And how do you manage all those various personalities?
Yeah, kind of like that. You gotta just let them all do their thing. And that's how creativity gets born. And you have to, for me as a producer, I have to let big egos like Gene and Paul just flourish into the room and into the music, right? And then since it is their show, right, just let them go pretty much. And then when they look to me for guidance, then let them take over and guide. And then when he looks to me, just give the answer and go from there. But it's really he's running, with all these artists, that have bigger egos and stuff, they're running the show and they want to know that they're running the show. And that's okay. I can be blamed for all the bad things that happen, and they can be propped up for all the good things that happen, and that's fine. But it's, to me, I love making music. So sometimes I have to tell people, just leave your ego outside. Let's just deal with the music. We don't care about anything else when we're in this room. You want to fight with the drummer? Go outside and, knock each other out, do whatever you need to do. But, if you need to do that, then figure it out on your own time and just make sure everybody's well enough to come to work and put in some musical time.
Yeah. That sounds like both of you are a bit of like minds. Bruce and Toby are just kind of letting the music and all the different things that happen in the studio happen, and then I guess you pick your moments.
Oh, for sure. You definitely pick your moments. And, Bruce and I, making Carnival of Souls was, a team effort on he and I's part for sure. And because, there was a lot of stuff that, that, that we did that, just is now a part of history. And it was, we worked very closely together, and I really loved it, Bruce. It was awesome.
Oh, thanks. I definitely remember there was a few key things that would happen well, I think the most stressful thing, some of the mixing got really stressful. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Yes.
by then we knew that they were going to do the reunion tour, but it didn't matter. At least there wasn't any more of the backdoor, kind of where are those guys? What's going on? They're Paul's trying his boots on in the studio, the Kiss boots.
Silly
it was
shit.
all okay. But I just remember I don't know why Gene got so strange that day with Childhood's End. That was a song that I think I'm permanently scarred with. And now I don't hate the mix, even though it is a bit bass heavy and there's some other things going on there. But I just remember whatever he wanted to do with the mixing thing, you were just like, I think you had to leave the room. I could be wrong,
I did have to leave the room. I do remember that.
Okay.
Because he just wanted it his way, and there was no,
Right.
listening to other, volume, anything, any mix, any different mix of any kind. He wanted it his way, and that's the way it was going to be. And that's the way it actually is on the record.
Yeah.
It's his way. And so, when you come down to it, right? So, I'm just a hand between, his ears and what he wants to hear. So if he wants the bass up, you're going to get the bass up. When it gets too out of proportion, who's to call that? He is.
Yeah, he's Gene Simmons, exactly. No, I think you had the right approach, and I don't blame you for just it's you're Gene Simmons and I'm not. I'll be out there. Let me know when you're done.
Right. Exactly.
But I knew the tension that happened, so I was always and you're right. I'm thinking now, especially it's sparking my memory. You talking about that record and seeing you and all, which is wonderful, by the way. That they did lean on me a bit, especially with all the co-writing, right? And they loved Eric, and Eric was always opinionated about drums, about guitars rather, but he's the drummer, and still more the new guy. So I think at times I remember Paul when he wanted to play for me, I Will Be There, you know what I mean? And the vocals, how it had to start out in a low octave and then he rises. And at first I was just like, whoa, that's really interesting. It kind of surprised me, but I was really flattered that he was like, actually, so check it out. What do you think? You know what I mean?
Right.
And that ego, like you said, these artists that have these, they do have egos about who they are and what their needs are, to be who they are.
Right.
I'm always aware that Gene was always he didn't want anybody talking on the mic, in the control room. If he's in there, if he didn't know what you were saying, that would drive him completely crazy. He'd be so angry.
Oh, yeah.
So it was always keep the mic on, let him know what we're talking about. You know what I mean? Isn't that weird?
I remember
that. Like, come on, he's so talented. He's such a great singer, and he's worried about what we're talking about. We were probably saying like, hey, could somebody get us a soda or something? You know what I mean?
That's funny. I will say, when you talk about a Childhood's End, if you, as a listener of the album that's not attached to it in the sense that you guys have been, writing it and producing it and stuff, when you listen to it, that song does sound like it's a little bit stand out next to the feel of I'm not talking about the songwriting, because I'll the other songs all seem to fit in the same line as far as the same groove, but the Childhood's End does have some sort of different square peg vibe to it.
Well, the whole thing about all those and Toby, weren't there a lot of kids? I forget where they came from or whatever. There's all those kids singing at the end, right?
Yeah, we got like, what was it, 100 kids or something?
I don't know where they were from. Maybe you remember. I don't know, but it was
I don't
cool.
remember where they were a kids chorus from somewhere.
There you go. But and that was like they learned that from Ezrin, from something from the Destroyer or whatever, or Pink Floyd or whatever.
Just Pink Floyd, yeah.
but that, I like that element. I thought that was really cool. I liked my harmony guitar solo in it, and how he made my Les Paul be, and that was Gene's idea, make it as clean as possible. That intro guitar, the strumming guitar, it isn't electric, but it almost sounds. See, he really embraced a lot of the bands that you were working with, you know, and he was attracted to different textures, and Paul was always basic, you know, rock and roll, and I think that's why. Meanwhile, he'll come up with a great riff. Master and Slave is his riff, you know, which is so damn catchy. So it was real interesting, them both dabbling in that kind of music. And I always tell the Kiss fans that approach me and tell me how much they love Carnival of Souls, and I say, well, thank you, but just remember, if you know, if you know a fan that they hate it, don't blame me. You know, I was just there to write some riffs.
Yeah, it depends on who you're talking to. It's like
Exactly.
saying, you know, I love Sade, and you know.
Yeah. Paul's never warmed up to it after all these years, and I understand that. And then I have people that just swear by it and think it's so amazing. And you know, all I could say is it was done at a very unusual time for the band, and I'm happy it's out there and it's identifiable with me. But I still don't want people just to judge my Kiss years that way. I love them to, you know, be Wild About Tears Are Falling and Crazy Nights and Forever and Unholy or whatever. So, you know, it's just another facet of my contributions in Kiss.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's like, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No. One thing I did want to just say, maybe both of you don't remember, as you were talking about the choir on Kissology, there's behind the scenes footage of you guys recording this album.
Yeah, there's some
Easter stuff on YouTube.
Stuff, yeah.
So I don't know, was that being recorded the whole way through?
You know, I actually think Tommy Thayer was there with a camera a lot, because, you know, he was always part of the Kiss family and everything. Even if he was just a co-writer and good friends with Gene, of course, and Paul. But yeah, there's footage of me like recording something and a birthday party that I had. There's other, you're right. There's stuff of that like that. I remember.
And I remember because I met you at another interesting place, whereas I was living in Oregon, and my mother for my birthday gave me tickets to the Seattle Kiss convention.
Okay.
And so we drove up 3 hours and went to that, and Tommy was there because I knew who he was from Black and Blue.
Sure.
And he had short hair at the time, and he was walking around with a video camera then.
Yes. So
and,
he was videotaping us a lot.
I'll see if you remember this real quick, because you did basically you did where you were doing a clinic.
Yes.
You and Eric both did one, and you walked off, and I came up to you and I handed you a cassette of Led Zeppelin at Ipswich, England. And you went to me, I've heard this, but
I might have, because I collected a lot of the Zeppelin bootlegs.
And you're like, but you know what? Paul probably hasn't heard it, so I'll give it to Paul.
Yeah. And
I was young at the time, you know, in my early 20s, and I walked away like, he's going to give the tape to Paul.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, but what is
he loves Led Zeppelin too, of course.
Are there any extra songs lying around though, Toby and Bruce, from Carnival of Souls?
I don't think so. I know, you know, there were more demos, but I think we finished everything we started. What do you remember, Toby?
Yeah, the same. You know, everything that we picked for that record got finished and mixed.
Did you pass on Within? Did you heard that and didn't want it?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
It wasn't. It didn't seem to be in the vibe of the grunge that we were trying to go for.
Yeah. And were you surprised to see it on the Psycho Circus record?
I was.
They even did it live a little bit. I thought
they did on the Psycho Circus tour.
Isn't that weird? Yeah.
You know,
it wouldn't have had the life it had maybe if it was on Carnival.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You know, because Carnival got jacked around so much that, you know. Like, who knows?
Terrible.
There is on Gene's solo album Asshole. There is a song called Carnival of Souls that he put on there with you and Eric.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on the vault and stuff like that from the same sessions when we worked on Hate and when we were working on what would become Childhood's End. In fact, Eric Singer just yesterday sent me something that it made it look like Carnival of Souls, the whatever, you know, like a bootleg, and it's actually a combination of a lot of the vault stuff from Gene. And Eric was curious if he played on it. I said, yeah, hate, because he did a lot of the demos with Eric, with Gene and I, rather. We had fun.
Right.
We really did. And Paul works differently. He doesn't necessarily want to just jam with people in a studio, but that's what Gene was doing then. I was really shocked when Gene did the vault. There were still a few other really cool dark riff kind of heavy things that I did with Gene that he didn't even put on the vault. And I know he knows them, but it was a very creative period in a weird way for the band. And one other point I wanted to mention and see if what Toby knew about it. So we do MTV. Obviously that's where they all met to realize that they'll do a reunion. Okay. But they had to keep it quiet. So that was filmed in August, right? The record's going to come out, MTV doesn't come out till later. But the point is, we were having all these songs written. Paul already had songs written. Gene had plenty. And I remember saying to Gene, I knew they were talking to you, Toby, about producing. And I would bother Gene and go like, any word, and it was like, I couldn't get a clear answer from him. So when did you know we were actually going to record? Because I almost felt like I said to Gene, when are we recording? You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden he got back to me later and we were booked with you over at, what was it, Music Grinder?
Yeah, Music Grinder on Wood Boulevard.
So did they leave you hanging for a while because they couldn't focus on, well,
Yes.
Could we record? Will we record? Or do we jump right into the reunion tour? You see what I mean?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, the way I remember it going down was I went and had a meeting with them at A&M, Henson Studios at some point.
Yep.
And I know Gene and Paul were there and I was really nervous and all that. And they just told me that they, love my work, this and that. And what would I do with a Kiss record?
Right.
And I was like, what can I do with a Kiss record? And what can't I do? Like the possibilities are endless. Well, we want to make this kind of a grungy thing. Okay. Because that's what's happening right now. Right.
Right.
So, the way I remember it going down was I got that interview and then my management at the time was like, I was like, stay on that guy. I want this gig really bad. So, just keep calling them and just make a pain in the ass out of us. And, maybe we'll get that gig because I really want this.
Yeah. And everybody out there should know that producers also had managers and agents in a sense back in that day.
That's right.
And they would actually like, hey, you want my guy? He's available now or whatever, right. Okay.
Right. So, so I had that going on. And then, all of a sudden I got that phone call and I was like, they want to start in a week. I was like,
yep.
Oh, shit.
You could thank me for that phone call because I was pushing him like going, when are we going to record? Because we worked so hard on songs. Now, I don't know there's a reunion tour being planned. You see what I mean?
Right.
And I knew they had a commitment from the record company. That I knew, but I didn't know. Well, you could break that too. If they gave you an advance, you give it back. We're not recording, but there was no reason for them to do that. Plus, think about it. What better way to make sure that Ace and Peter play good, meaning do what they want, to make it successful? Because if they stopped what we were about and like kind of really put a period at the end of it, then, well, what leverage would they have? You see what I mean? So they carry on. Eric Singer and myself didn't do anything bad. We were still, Kiss was still successful, not as successful as a reunion tour, but you get what I mean. So carry on with this, see what happens, get that record done. Okay, now we're going to announce it in March, and the record's done. And then, of course, the record can't come out because they got to do the reunion tour. But at least they had that there just in case. I thought it was actually as painful as it might have been for me, it was still a very smart business move on their end.
Yeah,
well, I had the record in hand, so
I think the album would have been huge without the reunion tour, based on Revenge, and you did tap into the, it's grunge, and that isn't necessarily like, I mean, I know I've heard Paul be like, "What can I write to be miserable about? I'm a rich rock star,"
Yep.
So he kind of wrote songs like Jungle, he kind of got around to Master and Slave, writing about different things. But I mean, Jungle, I'm from New Jersey, obviously, originally. And I mean, you know, I was friends with Eddie Trunk, and I worked at DHA for a little while and stuff. And that was huge on DHA, and it started taking off on rock radio jungle.
Yeah.
And, you know, but there was no promotion behind it. And it still did well on like the rock charts and stuff, you know. So
More geographical, right? A little geographical, like, you know, certain areas of the world. Yeah.
No, I think it was going to take off, Tom, anyway.
Yeah.
It did on regular rock radio, like, you know, mainstream rock radio. Not your like your your Hot 100 Billboard chart, but your rock radio that they focus.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
Metal Edge actually had some award for me and Kurt, the co-writers, and Paul for Jungle, you know, best song, something like that. And it did get a lot of attention, considering there was no band to support it. That whole effort, and I was actually really surprised, and I did help a little bit when asked, but they were going to, once it died down and that reunion tour and all that, you know, had to take a break before they would make their next move. They knew the record company knew they had a record in the can, and they paid for it, and they were going to put it out. So Carnival of Souls, the final sessions, with just a photo from a magazine covering us in the studio. You know, it was never an official cover, but there it goes, the final sessions. And Paul always told me it would come out, even though it was widely bootlegged really badly, and that was torture for me. Because, you know, cassette to cassette back then, there wasn't a lot of digital yet. And it was just awful what people would play me. I go like, what? You know, but anyway, getting back to, you know, they knew they could do some promotion. They're big right now, Gene and Paul. And they asked if I wanted to help. They asked Eric if he wanted to help. Eric wasn't interested because he's not in the band. You know, why would he be promoting it? You know, I had 9 co-writes. I certainly wanted to help promote it. But even whatever attempt they made at doing some radio for it, how effective could it be when it's all going to go right back to the reunion tour? You know what I mean? The band with Eric and I wasn't even together anymore, and they were making plans for Psycho Circus, of course. But I'm still really proud it's out there. It's the one great thing about a record, a CD that's released or whatever. It lives forever, and you never know when you're going to discover it. And I'm sure there's young people right now that getting into Kiss in the last couple of years, and they only know some of the albums. And now there's another one for them to check out, and it might turn out to be their favorite one. Who knows?
Now, I have another question for Toby, but I also want to mention that there's some other work that you've done over the years. There's 2 things that really stood out to me. And I want to also thank Mike for sending over research so I could get a little deeper understanding of both of you. But one thing that stood out to me is and you have jumped genres, Kanye West, the 2004, The College Dropout. That's a jump, especially for
but it's, you know, you're talking about me, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's just, you know, Kanye re-recorded a song from the Blackjack days with Michael Bolton. So I didn't have to do anything but answer the phone and let my manager handle it. And I turned up as a co-writer on it. So
now,
that was nice.
Now, would you say, like, you know, if because there's a lot of, mixes that pop into vary like R&B and hip hop. If you were asked to, because I know that Slash has done some things where, you know, he's done studio work. Is that something that you, given the opportunity that
I would have jumped into that. I remember sitting next to the producer for Drake. Okay. And we're flying back from Canada or something. I'm coming back from a Grand Funk gig, and I was begging him to say, I told him who I was, and we had a nice chat. He was chatting me up about Bitcoin, actually. Okay. And he's wearing diamond rings that were just like ridiculous, you know, and Drake's a great star in that genre, not my cup of tea, not my thing, but big star. But I know that a lot of those artists, sometimes they do get a rock guitar player. They do something a little different, you know. And I would have been there in a heartbeat. I never heard from him, but I'm just saying, you know, why not? But Billy Squier has been sampled and covered. It happened a lot in rock. So I don't want anyone out there to think I went to the studio to record or, you know, work with Kanye West. Although Paul McCartney wrote a song with him. That was pretty crazy years back. You know, it was a good song too.
Good music is good music.
There is a song, isn't there, Bruce, off of Tail of the Tape that is like one of the hugest hip hop samples.
Yeah, Big Beat. And in fact, I was just looking into all that. It's been covered like over 300 times. It was just the drum thing. Sometimes you could hear a little bit of down, 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 the two guitar chords. I was always, that was a great record, even though I bet Billy's made more money from it being sampled than the actual sales of Tail of the Tape. Okay. Way more money. Okay. I think he's retired. That guy was very talented. It was really a pleasure to work with him, you know.
And then Toby, to you, kind of like the same question is like, I mean, obviously the niche that I don't want to call it carving out, but you've been able to, I mean, just cultivate a huge career with rock stars across multiple decades. As things shift over the course of time, as they inevitably do, how have you looked at the changing landscape, looking at different artists that are coming up? A lot more mixing that they do on their own, a lot more different influences that they bring in. So is it more just that you kind of like to stay within a particular area, or you like to expand the horizons, just see wherever the hell it goes?
I think, you know, there's only two forms of music to my ear, and that's good music and bad music. You know, and I try to produce good music, right? Of course. But as far as, you know, like keeping up with the times and the Joneses and all that, I keep working with younger and younger artists. And, you know, I have a couple of girls that I've signed to my label now that, you know, are pretty awesome. They're younger. One's 23 and one's 30, but amazing singers, and it's completely different kind of stuff. But it's what they want to do. You know what I mean? And so I get in there and I produce with, you know, what they want to do. I like to bring an artist's vision to the vinyl or to the CD or, you know, whatever. And so I find that, you know, that's the most interesting thing I think about my job is that, you know, it's like anybody, you know, I don't want to stay in one metal or pop or rock or whatever, right? I just want to do whatever I'm feeling, you know what I mean? And so if, you know, have some hip hop elements, great. If it has some, you know, classical elements, great. If it's pure metal and, you know, Cookie Monster singing, great. You know, it doesn't matter as long as, you know, it's getting the artist's vision out there to me.
Definitely.
You know?
Yeah, and there's like some core. It's like, you know, there's some things that we always go back to. You know, Bruce, you mentioned, you know, at the beginning, Black Sabbath, Simon and Garfunkel, that sort of thing. Me, Led Zeppelin, Mike, Kiss, actually, Mike with Kiss. So,
and me with Simon and Garfunkel. I am a huge Paul Simon fan.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I have.
You know, Toby actually has a real, you know, him being so knowledgeable with engineering and at the same time working as a producer with so many different bands. It really gives him a great, you know, there's so many tools to that artist to experience with him, you know, because he can capture them and he knows every type of sound from the Beatles to metal or the Cookie Monster, you know, and then at the same time, he's helped produce a lot of great artists. So that's a great asset for these young artists. I'm sure you're having a lot of fun with that, Toby. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. It's, you know, it is a lot of fun. You know, sometimes it gets a little frustrating because they don't understand, you know, but you have to have that patience that we have and, you know, just go back, explain. And then, you know, always, as we've done in the studio, is give examples and then listen. Right.
Yep.
You know, and because you can't just say, hey, I have an idea and somebody shoot it down like, it's not going to work. Oh, wait, I haven't heard anything yet. Let's hear it. You know, when we hear it completed, then we can say, hey, is it good? Is it bad? Does it make it better? Does it make it worse? You know, and then we can make a decision from there.
Yeah. I learned that a lot from Bob Ezrin because he would do some things that I'm glad I worked with him before you so that when you wanted to try something, I wasn't so like, what? You know what I mean? But Ezrin would do that to me, like take the compressor, you know, one of those Uris or whatever, you know, and just pin it. And I'm like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? What is that? And the guitar sounded like really weird to me and I didn't like it. He said, don't, you know, hold on. It's the other side. Okay. You know, and then the other one is the really rich Marshall tone. And then he played it, you know, like that. And I was just like, oh yeah, that's kind of really cool.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And again, I would never think that, fucking up the pedal, or rather the outboard gear, would contribute to something really creative in the sound, So hopefully your artists too are willing to listen and give it a shot, because you have a wealth of that material at your disposal to share.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, they do for the most part, but
Yep.
then there is that thing where, they have their vision and that particular thing isn't fitting with their vision. Then that's okay.
Yeah, no, and that's the good thing about you. You're not gonna most of the time, some of those producers from the big rock eras, the 80s and the 90s, that the label sat really firmly on the producer. I want another whatever it is. You see what I mean?
Yep.
And sometimes then the band is really not going to get what they wanted. Now, fortunately for the Crazy Nights album with Neverson, that Paul he wanted the Heart hit, the Ozzy hit, he wanted them to, give them, he wanted that Neverson sound so that they could maybe get more radio success. So Gene's fighting and miserable, and Paul's like kind of happy, you know what I mean? And in the end, it was still a great Kiss album, and we could debate all that, but it doesn't matter. Now I would think a lot of artists really do need to complete their vision, and there isn't so much of that label pressure necessarily, So.
And so we do have to wrap up in a few moments, and I have just another question for Toby, and I apologize I wasn't at the last interview that Mike conducted, but I did have a quick question for you.
Tom,
yeah,
present him the award yourself. The OSA.
The OSA?
That's the award, Tom. We gave it to Jay. I interviewed Toby before, Bruce, and his buddy Jay was on there, and he got awarded the OSA award because Tom wasn't there. So we're going to give, but Toby wanted one. And I said, wait, you have 4 Grammys. You can hold off to the next time. So he wants the OSA award.
All right. So then I should bring up my friend, this is Mortimer. Sometimes he shows up in interviews, just walks, just walks in. Anything. Make him walk along or something like that. So I don't know.
There you go.
Actually, this is a question for I'm in a band right now, just good friends and everything, and the guitarist is a huge Fish fan, like, oh my god, huge Fish fan. And I understand part of your catalog is the work with Trey Anastasio's self-titled 2002 album.
Yes.
So just general question. We've seen him. I mean, Dan and I were like front and center, right in front of when he was playing over at the Portchester Capitol Theater with the Trey Anastasio band. But what's it like working with Trey?
Oh, dude, the man is an amazingly talented guitar player. I mean, unbelievable. I worked with him on that record, which I just mixed. And then I also mixed the Oysterhead record, which is a record that not many people know about, with Les Claypool, and Trey, and why am I forgetting his name? Stuart Copeland from the Police. And man, what a great record that was. But Trey, he's an effortless type of musician that can really play anything that he even thinks of, and maybe some things that he doesn't think of too. He's that good. You know that feeling, right, Bruce?
Well, I always wish I could play the stuff I can't even think of. Yes. That's a big goal of mine. No, he's a very talented guy. I used to read about it. They're like legendary, like a Grateful Dead, the vibe. So that's another great facet of your career. So that's wonderful. All right, guys.
Yeah.
This has been fun.
Yeah, thank you very much. I gotta say, and not with respect to all the other interviews that we've done thus far, there's some interviews that just flow, and this is definitely one of them. I think at one point halfway through, it's just like Mike and I just kind of like we're just like, we're just gonna kick.
Yeah, you're probably giggling because Toby and I are reminiscing like we're at the bar or something. And
that was freaking.
Yeah, but that's what you wanted. That's what we wanted.
All
right, well, you got it. All right. Well, thank you guys, and everybody out there. BruceKulick.com's how to reach me. Toby, I know how to reach you, and you know how to reach me. Okay.
That's right.
And I want to thank you guys, of course, for the invite. This was a lot of fun, especially to talk about Carnival Souls. So it was really good to see you, Toby. Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you. And Bruce, to wrap it up, I just want to say something from me.
Uh-huh.
You are one of my heroes. Okay. From the time I was like 14 when I went and saw that Kiss show on this date in 1985. And you've been with me since. And I'm still sticking with you, and I'm still enjoying your contributions to music. So you got a lifelong fan, and now I'm looking at you this way too. So I really appreciate your time. And
no problem.
Thank you again for being here and all the music and joy you brought to me.
All right,
Toby,
thanks.
You're a new friend. We talk after we had the interview, and I will be back and speak to you more about your project, and you will see his interview right after yours. And I watched it last night, and it's very good. So Bruce, Toby, Kiss, Carnival of Souls.
Yep.
Have a great night.
I'll take us out as usual. Again, thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of Rockland Sound in the books. And to follow us, just join us at RocklandSound.com. You can catch us on YouTube. You can catch us on Facebook, all the traditional social media sites. And we look forward to working with a lot more amazing artists and producers and mixers, people that really make the music industry thrive. So for now, I'm Tom Osa with Mike Doherty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Take care.